Hi everyone. This is what happened to me when I got government housing part 84. So on the 9th of the 11th, 2017, I went to work at my Work for the Dole activity, and later I left the unit to walk to my daughter's school so I could collect her and take her home. When I was walking down the street, I saw one of the residents from the block and I started talking to them. This person, who I will call He-Man, told me that Mr. B-Knee had died, which I already knew. But he said something else which was extremely upsetting. And once again, I have to say that if there is anyone watching this who is going through a sensitive time, you may want to stop watching and come back when you're feeling better. This was very hard for me, and for those of you who have watched all of my videos and those of you who know what it's like to live in these circumstances, I think it might be hard for you too. But by the time we get to the end of this series, I think you'll understand why I had to include all the details that I have. So, you know that I was living in poverty, but I had to work because that's the way it is in Australia when you're on welfare. And I still wanted to look after my daughter more than anything. So that meant that I had to open my front door and actually walk down the street. And doing those things was often hard for many reasons. So I was talking to He-Man, and after he told me that Mr. B-Knee was dead, he told me that the other man who had lived in my friend's unit was dead as well. That was the man who moved in right after my friend had died. And needless to say, I was devastated by this news. I started crying, which would normally be a relief, but it didn't feel that way. It felt different. And he went on to tell me that this man had died of a drug overdose and that he believed it was suicide. Now, we can't get into a talk about suicide in this series, and I can't talk about it in this case because I don't know if that was true. And I don't know how He-Man could have possibly known that to tell me that. I've never dealt with a police officer who tells people what someone's method of suicide was, and probably because I've never been on good terms with the police, but either way, I think it would be highly unethical if a police officer told He-Man what happened. So I was going crazy, trying to digest what I had heard and trying to make sense of what He-Man had told me. And I was so sad for the poor man who may have taken his own life, and I hated all the public servants who had refused to listen to me and all the lawyers who had refused to represent me and all the people at the block and everyone else, and I didn't know what to do. I was sick of burying my feelings, and I was sick of people in the justice system expecting me to do work for them and to deal with things that they were paid to deal with themselves. I felt like I had been duped into doing the work of all the public servants who had refused to help me, and most of those people get at least $80,000 pay per year. Poor and disadvantaged people were suffering and dying alone, and I believe that they were dying unnecessarily. I felt like the deaths of these three men was avoidable but I didn't know why I felt that way, and I didn't know how I could explain what I felt. I also didn't know who I could speak to about it. After being through everything that I had been through, there was no way that I could risk speaking to the police about the way I felt because I risked being yelled at or falsely accused of being mentally ill or some other nasty and cruel thing that they would have liked to come up with to use against me. I don't know what the statistics are on people dying in a block of units, but there were only 8 units in this block, and 3 people had died in a space of around 18 months, and it was so sad and so overwhelming. These people who had died in the same unit, so that was also beyond comprehension. I couldn't think of what the statistics were on 3 men dying in the same block in the same unit in an 18-month period. And I tried not to think about it, but I had to rationalize what had happened somehow. And unlike the public servants who dealt with those issues, I wasn't being paid and I didn't have training to deal with what had happened, and I couldn't ask anyone for leave, and I couldn't go and book a holiday to get away from it all to recharge my batteries. I was stuck with the reality of what happened, and there was nothing that I could do about it, and I couldn't get away. I was stuck with all the debts that I incurred in fighting off the respondent, and I was stuck with the upcoming court and VCAT hearings, and I was stuck with the memories of how I was treated by the police and the other people working in the justice system. I had been convinced that they weren't going to help me and that I had to do it all on my own. And I wondered if the 3 people who had died felt as alone as I did, and I wondered how that feeling had affected them. I know that one of the people who had died in my friend's unit was having problems with a particular public servant, but I won't name either of them in this video. I know this man was being put under pressure, and I know he wanted to get away and let some other people stay in his unit for a while. And I know the public servant wasn't allowing that to happen, but I didn't know why they didn't want it to happen. I can't think of any reason why people in government housing can't go away for a while, and I can't think of any reason why we can't let people stay in our units for a while. I wasn't able to talk to that person about the situation in detail because of the respondent and how he would stop people from talking to each other. I also think that the man that I am referring to was scared to talk about why he felt trapped.